Hi, this is Mr. McConley for BKW Intro to Agriculture, and today we're going to talk a little bit about implements that have hookups off of the PTO. So, as we had shown in an earlier video, on the back of a tractor you have what's called a power takeoff, a PTO, and that's a steel shaft that has splines on it, and those splines fit into this here. So this is the PTO shaft that will run the blades on this. Right now we're talking about a brush hog. So this spins, and so when that shaft is in here, and I can actually turn it by hand here. So I can get this thing turning by hand, and right now the blades underneath, you see them?
Yep.
The blades underneath are turning. I'm just turning it by hand. All right. So that's kind of the basics of how this works. Now, still focusing on this, when this goes to hook up, you wouldn't ever want this thing to come flying off. It would be extremely dangerous. And this particular one spins at 540 revolutions per minute, 540 times around per minute. Now there's other PTOs that other tractors run for different types of equipment that might run at 1,000 revolutions per minute. But this one's 540, and you can also tell by the spacing and the size of the teeth where 1,000 PTO has finer, smaller, and they come in various diameters also based on the size of the tractor. Anyway, to keep this from flying off, inside here, I don't know if you can see on the camera, but inside there's little ball bearings. Yep. And these, when you push this back, this is a locking collar, so you push this back, it slides onto the shaft. At this point, those balls are allowed, they can push out just like that, so I can push all of them out. When it's released, the balls snap back in, and those detent balls will hold this shaft onto the PTO shaft on the back of the tractor. Now it's important to keep all this stuff lubricated properly. These are all universal joints and they have grease in them, and it's important to keep them lubricated that way because you wouldn't want them to wear and then break down and snap. Now one of the most important things on these PTO shafts is this plastic cover here. Now you might think this is just for looks or doesn't really serve a purpose, but it's actually extremely important because when this shaft is spinning again, like I had it spinning before, get it spinning again, you would not want the outside plastic to also be spinning, because if the outside plastic was spinning also, it could allow someone or something to hook on it. Like you could get a little too close and you have this loose shirt and it hooks on that spinning shaft and yanks you right down. And this is not going to stop. A lot of tractors will have 50, 70, 100 horsepower of power on this PTO shaft. So when this thing's spinning, there's almost nothing that's going to stop it from spinning, and you catching your shirt on it, you might think you can just yank yourself out of the way. You won't be able to. It's much too strong. So what this plastic guard does is it allows so that the outside is not spinning while the inside is spinning. And then this little safety chain would hook to the tongue of the tractor, and that way if this plastic were to become dented or somehow broken, it still would not allow it to spin because this chain would hold it still. And so even if the plastic wanted to spin, it would keep it from spinning, and the inside would spin independently. Okay? So another thing I want to point out before I move on from that is a lot of farmers do the same thing that we do here at Looking Up Farm, is with our hooded sweatshirts and different hooded coats, we take out the strings. Because I knew a farmer, lives pretty close by, runs a big dairy farm, and he had a hooded sweatshirt and he had a mixer wagon that was hooked up with the PTO shaft like we're showing, and he leaned over to do something. I don't know exactly what he was doing, but his string from his hooded sweatshirt hooked on that PTO, and it yanked him down and he had all he could do to arch himself over the PTO shaft as it ripped his, not just the string, it ripped his whole hooded sweatshirt over his head and yanked it right off his body in a matter of a 1/10 of a second. And he was very lucky to walk away from that. And ever since then, he told us, take the strings out of your hooded sweatshirts. And I understand the logic, and I think it's a great piece of advice. Back to this though. You have the PTO shaft, that's driving the piece of equipment. Then, the other day, I showed you how there was a top link off the back of the tractor. So the top link would hook right into this point right here. And then you have the 3-point arms that would go here and here. Those 3-point arms had the handle, the lever that you could pull back, and when you pull that lever back, it would raise up and it would be able to lift this piece of equipment right up in the air. The top link just serves the purpose of keeping it all balanced. It really doesn't push or pull, it just keeps the spacing equal. So, when working around equipment, obviously very dangerous, especially with a PTO, and you have to be very aware that this thing is spinning at a very high rate. It's almost impossible to stop it, and so you have to use precautions. You have to stay safe distances away. When you're hooking up your piece of equipment, always turn off the tractor, make sure everything is not moving and stable before you go to hook it up. That way you never run the risk of that thing starting to engage. And basically make sure all your safety guards are in place and in good working condition. So for today, I'm Mr. McConley. This is BKW Intro to Agriculture.